It's one thing to read about history in textbooks or hear about it in classrooms, but it's quite another to see it with your own eyes and even to touch it with your own hands. That's an experience that archaeologists have every day as they conduct digs and studies into the civilizations and cultures that came before us, and they find some remarkable things in the process. We hope you'll find everything you're about to see in this video just as fascinating as we do. While the conditions that have restricted so many activities across the world in 2020 have prevented many of us from doing our jobs, they've allowed archaeologists in the United Kingdom to go about their work undisturbed. More than 47,000 separate discoveries have been announced in the country over the course of the year, but the most significant among them is this hoard of extremely valuable Tudor coins. The coins, found in the garden of a house in the New Forest, are especially notable because some of them bear the initials of the wives of King Henry VIII, including Jane Seymour, Anne Boleyn, and Catherine of Aragon. The 63 coins were minted during the 1530s and are all gold, save for one single one, and were found by a couple who were turning the soil in their garden to alleviate the boredom during quarantine. The names of the king's wives have never been found on coins before, which begs the question of why these coins were so special and why they were printed at all. As of right now, the answers to those questions are unknown. Sometimes, fantastic historical artifacts can be acquired for knockdown prices from people who have no idea of their true value. During the 1970s, Professor Yigal Ronen was walking through a Bedouin market in Beersheba, Israel, when a tiny oval seal caught his eye. He paid only a handful of shekels for it and immediately took it to the Ben Gurion University of the Negev for examination. There, it was determined that his bargain purchase was actually a 2,300-year-old royal seal from the Iron Age, making it the oldest royal seal ever found in Israel. Its regal heritage is verified by the imprint of a roaring lion on its surface, and a brief inscription which reads, "To hear," which is presumably shorthand for "to hear the voice of the king." Experts believe that it probably dates back to the time of King Jeroboam II. It wouldn't have belonged to the king himself, but to royal officials dealing with the monarch's administration and communications. Although he feared that it might be a forgery, a series of high-tech tests carried out in 2020 finally verified that it's a genuine artifact and has earned it a place in a museum. You'll find paintings and other works of art in the corridors and rooms of many town halls all over the world. But even the occupants of those town halls sometimes have no idea of the value or significance of the works they exhibit. For more than 60 years, this painting hung on the wall of a small town hall in Brussels, Belgium, until December 2020, when it was confirmed to be a rare Baroque masterpiece by Jacques Jordan. Not only is it a rare work, but as it was completed in 1618, it's believed to be the oldest copy of the Holy Family painting ever discovered. That isn't the only thing that makes it notable either. Tests performed on the painting's wooden frame have proven that the wood came from the same tree that provided the frames for works by Jordan's fellow Baroque master, Anthony van Dyck, seemingly confirming that the two worked side by side in the same studio under the tutelage of Peter Paul Rubens. The painting will eventually go back on the wall of the town hall, but when it does, it will have some additional security measures put in place to safeguard it. The best kinds of archaeological discoveries are those that force us to reassess what we think we know about history. Our next remarkable find fits into that category. It's a Roman mosaic that was discovered in November 2017 in Britain, and it's the first known example of a 5th century Roman mosaic to be found in the country. Until now, it's been thought that the Romans left the British Isles after the collapse of Imperial Roman authority in the country during the 4th century, but this mosaic suggests that some of them clung on a little longer. Tests carried out on the attractive mosaic have shown that it was made during the middle of the century, Britain was no longer part of the Roman Empire after the year 410, so whoever these Romans were, their family stuck around for more than a century after that. It's even possible that the Gloucestershire area was effectively a Roman mini-state that managed to survive and thrive long after the rest of the country had entered the Dark Ages. Some of the ceramics and marble found at the same site are imports from the Eastern Mediterranean, so whoever lived here was wealthy and well-connected. As far as we know, pterosaurs were the first creatures capable of flight ever to live on Earth. They flourished for more than 150 million years before becoming extinct around 65 million years ago. Where they evolved from and how they became capable of flight has always been an attractive mystery to historians and paleontologists, and a newly discovered set of fossils, skulls, and skeletons found across North and South America in recent years might provide a few answers. They belong to species known as logopedids, who lived before dinosaurs and might be the closest ancestor to the pterosaur. Logopedids were incapable of flight, as they had no wings, but they were small, agile, and very well balanced. Their skulls and forelimbs are very similar to those found on pterosaur skeletons, pointing to an evolutionary connection between the two. To back the idea up, scientists performed microcomputed tomographic scans on the remains to prove that the brains and sensory systems of both creatures were alike. We still don't know where the wings of pterosaurs suddenly appeared from, but at least we appear to be a step closer to finding an answer. Archaeologists in Ukraine have spent much of 2020 investigating a number of findings on the island of Khortytsia, and they finally made those findings public in November. Among their discoveries are a large cannon on a carriage used for storming fortresses, winter homes once owned and lived in by Cossacks, and most impressively of all, an undisturbed tomb belonging to a mighty Scythian warrior. It's the first time such a tomb has been found undisturbed since 1992, and it had remained untouched for around 2,500 years. Inside the tomb, archaeologists discovered the occupant buried with a quiver of arrows at his side, indicating his warrior status. They believe he was around 40 when he passed away, and had unusually clean and healthy teeth for someone of his era. He was also unusually tall for his time, standing at 5 feet and 10 inches. At his side, the experts found a plate of sacrificial food, along with an iron knife, featuring a handle made from bone. The winter villages, on the other hand, were probably built during the 15th century and occupied by soldiers taking part in military operations during the coldest months of the year. Our next journey takes us to Croatia, where archaeologists have found an extremely rare Greek Illyrian helmet hidden inside an ancient burial cave. Open-faced bronze helmets like this were invented in Peloponnese and became popular 2,800 years ago. But they must have remained popular for a very long time. The remains of the warrior in the grave the helmet was discovered inside are more like 2,400 years old. Perhaps that's not surprising, because the helmet design spent years passing from one civilization and culture to another. It began with the Greek Etruscans, but moved on to the Scythians, and then to the Illyrians. It was considered obsolete in Greece for at least 100 years before this warrior was buried. That doesn't mean that the grave's occupant was poor or forced to use hand-me-downs as armor, though. His other grave goods included spears, knives, a series of spiral-shaped bronze ornaments, several amber-beaded necklaces, and 15 bronze and silver clasps. Despite all of that treasure, though, the helmet is still the most valuable find and is one of fewer than 40 that have ever been discovered in Europe. Speaking of value discoveries in graves, we've also recently heard about a tomb in the southeast of South Korea belonging to an ancient Silla Kingdom princess, and according to the archaeologists who've seen it, dripping with gold. Both the princess and the treasures date back to the Silla Kingdom of the 5th century, right in the middle of its period of dominion over the Korean peninsula, which started 2,100 years ago and ended in the year 935. The treasures found within the tomb, which are so rare and rich that it's almost impossible to value them, include a gilded bronze brooch, golden chest ornaments, golden earrings and pendants, bracelets and rings made of solid gold, and golden jewel beetles. Some of the more curious discoveries made alongside them include hundreds of baduk stones, believed to have been used to play a board game popular in East Asia during ancient times, and 50 mica pieces which, according to Taoist tradition, denote eternal youth. The small size of many of the jewelry pieces suggests that the occupant of the tomb died young, which might explain why the tributes afforded to her were so lavish. We tend to think of counterfeit money as a modern-day problem, but humans have been attempting to get away with fraud for as long as they've existed. And we can prove this by telling you about this vast hoard of ancient Egyptian counterfeit money, discovered in December 2020. Coins and notes didn't exist when this counterfeit money was created 2,200 years ago, and so the economy of the time was dominated by gold, silver, and bronze. Unfortunately, when several Bronze Age civilizations collapsed within a few decades of each other in the Eastern Mediterranean, silver became scarce. That led to people taking criminal measures. Archaeologist Zilla Eschel has spent much of the past year studying hoards of what's long been thought to be Bronze Age silver, collected from sites all over Egypt and Israel, only to find that much of it is actually cheap copper alloy coated with silver to make it look like something more valuable. This probably wasn't a con carried out by market traders, though. Zilla thinks it's much more likely that the rulers of Egypt didn't want people in Canaan, which belonged to Egypt back then, to find out that they were running out of silver. They ordered the creation of the fake silver to make it appear that they were still rich during a time when everyone else was running low. It was such a good scam that it went undetected for thousands of years. People in China have been farming rice from paddy fields for generations. But even some of the people who still do it today don't know how far back the traditional occupation goes. They know that their grandparents did it, and so did the grandparents of their grandparents. But the discovery of an ancient paddy field close to the ruins of Hanjin in Sohong County, Jiangsu, has shown that it goes back a lot further than that. This site was first farmed approximately 8,000 years ago. The archaeologists responsible for the discovery believe that it's not just the oldest wet farming site in China, but the oldest in the whole world. The existence of the field has been missed up until now because it's so small, and also because of where it is. It covers only 300 square feet, and it's overshadowed by the existence of the famous Neolithic ruins next to it. There can be no doubting its purpose, though. Carbonized rice has been identified at the site, as has evidence that rice was implanted into the soil repeatedly over many years. While there's some evidence of the ancient Chinese cultivating rice 10,000 years ago, this is the first known example of them doing so in such an organized fashion. When Viking leaders erected runestones, they generally did so in order to either commemorate a great victory or to tell the world how great and powerful they were. Sometimes they did both at the same time. They sometimes did so for other reasons, though, and you'll find evidence of that at Runriket, also known as the Rune Kingdom in Sweden. There are over 100 stones placed close together at the site, most of which were carved during the 11th and 12th centuries. Many of them tell the story of Jarlabanka, who ruled the region and oversaw a number of construction projects in the area, including a bridge that's still standing today. Many of the runestones tell of his achievements, but there's also evidence of a power struggle. From reading the runes, it appears that Jarlabanka spent his whole life at odds with his half-brother, who repeatedly tried to make his own claims on the territory. When mentioning this conflict, the inscriptions on the stones seek to legitimize Jarlabanka while simultaneously ridiculing and denigrating his relative, who's treated with such disdain that he's never even named on the stones. We suppose this would be the ancient equivalent of airing your family's dirty laundry on social media. While historians and archaeologists accept that they don't know everything there is to know about ancient human history, they have a rough order of events when it comes to the founding of the first permanent human settlements and then the first large-scale towns and cities. That order of events definitely doesn't allow for the existence of a massive city in Mozambique 200,000 years ago. But as of March 2020, that opinion might need revising. New evidence has revealed the existence of a colossal network of stone circles, covering an area of more than 1,200 square miles. Astonishingly, archaeologists are beginning to believe that the entire area was connected, effectively forming one gigantic ancient metropolis. Traces of roads have been found between the stone circles, along with agricultural platforms, and what appear to be gold mines around the perimeter of the settlement. Some of the stones appear to be the Egyptian Ankh symbol, but Egypt wasn't founded until the distant future from the point of view of the people who presumably lived here. Is the symbol actually theirs rather than the Egyptians? More importantly than that, who were they? King Ladislaus ruled Hungary during the 11th century and is an enormously significant figure in the nation's history. It would be natural to assume that such a significant figure would be afforded a lavish burial, but that wasn't the case for poor Ladislaus. His bones were discovered jumbled together with those of many others in an ossuary in Székesfehérvár in August 2022. On the plus side, his remains are now the only known bones of a saint to have been confirmed as definite osteological remains by scientists. The ossuary was once part of the city's basilica, which is a ruin today but was once at the heart of the city, which was the capital of Hungary during the medieval era. The crown jewels, Holy Crown and Golden Throne of Hungary, were all kept here, but the basilica was attacked and partially destroyed by invading forces from the Ottoman Empire in 1543. It's likely that the remains of King Ladislaus were disturbed at that time and couldn't be identified afterwards, leaving the people of the time with no option but to bury the bones in the jumbled pile they were discovered in. In late 2016, Professor Sherry Towers of Arizona State University conducted a detailed study of the architecture of the Sun Temple archaeological site in Mesa Verde National Park, Colorado. What she found there astounded her. The site contains equilateral triangles, Pythagorean 3-4-5 triangles, and a golden rectangle. While it's possible to imagine that one of these shapes might have been made by accident, the chances of all three of them being present accidentally are so slim they might as well be non-existent. This is despite the fact that the site was created 800 years ago by people who didn't have a written language and aren't thought to have had a numerical system. How is that possible? Perhaps we'd know more if we understood the purpose of the Sun Temple, but we don't. Aside from knowing it was an important focus of ceremonial activity, we have no idea what it was used for. Similar principles appear to have been used in the construction of Pueblo Bonito, so this isn't an isolated example of the genius of the Pueblo people. They must surely have known of a way of doing this that eludes our imagination. Our next outstanding artifact is known by many names. We've seen it called the Delphi tripod and the Platean tripod, but it's more commonly known as the Serpent Column. The ancient column stands in the Hippodrome of Constantinople in what's now Istanbul, Turkey. It hasn't always been there, though. It's part of what historians believe to have been an ancient Greek sacrificial tripod, and originally stood in Delphi before Constantine the Great had it moved to Constantinople in the year 324. Rather than literally being used in sacrifices, it's thought the column was built to honor and commemorate Greek soldiers who successfully fought the army of the Persian Empire in the Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE. The serpent heads of the column, of which there are 3, survived almost all the way to the modern era, but were destroyed in the 17th century. Siladar Findiklili Mehmed Aga, a historian of the 17th century, wrote that all 3 heads simply fell off the column overnight on October 20th, 1700. That seems spectacularly unlikely, but the true cause of the damage is unknown. Only the upper jaw of one of the heads still exists. If Batman is your favorite superhero, that's something you might have in common with the ancient Zapotec people of Mexico. The Batman they believed in wasn't a hero, though. He was a full-blown deity, and they called him Camazotz. He's also the subject of this stunning jade mask, which was found in what's left of the pyramids of Mont Alban. This was the center point of Zapotec culture 2,000 years ago, and it seems that worshipping the mask of the Bat God was close to the heart of that culture. The mask is a remarkable technical accomplishment for the people of the time. It's made of more than 20 separate pieces of jade, with painted yellow shells representing the eyes. Nobody's 100% sure why bats were so significant to the Zapotec, but it's thought that they were fascinated by the way vampire bats drank blood from cows. The bats were honored by way of human sacrifices. Presumably, those sacrifices were carried out by a priest wearing a mask very similar to this one. Maybe they shone a bat signal into the night sky to let people know it was time to come and see the ritual performed. Our next discovery isn't a single archaeological artifact, it's an entire place. It's called Rocapertus, and to the ancient Celts, it was the most important religious center in the world. What's left of it can be found close to Villars in France. Technically speaking, Rocapertu was a settlement, but it was considered such a sacred place that only priests were allowed to live there permanently. When the ancient Romans came to France, they took a strong dislike to Rocapertu for reasons unknown, and almost completely destroyed it. Its ruins weren't rediscovered until 1860. Even then, no archaeological digs were carried out at Rocapertu until 1923. Scientists and historians have had a hard time trying to work out when everything at the site was built. The Celts are thought to have expanded into the area 2,300 years ago, but the seated posture of some of the surviving statues is more typical of the 5th or 6th centuries BCE. Several reliefs and sculptures of the severed heads of humans and animals at the site have been cited as evidence of a so-called head cult in ancient France that was described by both Greek and Roman historians. Murud Janjira Fort in Raigad, India, was once thought to be utterly unconquerable. It was built on an island off the coast of Maharashtra in the late 13th century by a people called the Koli, known in both history and legend as the Fisherman King, and the secret of its success was its sustainability. Laying siege to the fort was pointless because there's a freshwater well in the middle of it, providing the people inside with fish to eat and water to drink. It took 200 years for the Muslim armies who repeatedly attempted to conquer the fort to find a way to do it, and when they eventually did so, it was as ingenious as it was brutal. They disguised themselves as liquor merchants, gained entry to the fort under false pretenses, got the soldiers drunk, and then slaughtered them when they were practically defenseless, thus claiming the fort for the Habashi. Even the mighty British Empire couldn't take the fort when they took the rest of India. The Brits eventually signed a treaty with the Siddis that the fort would remain under local control, which made it the only independent outpost in all of India during the colonial era. Legend has it that Krakus Mound is the final resting place of King Krakus, the founder of Krakow, Poland. That's almost certainly not true, not least because King Krakus is widely thought to be a mythical figure, much like King Arthur of England. But it's still a place of intrigue for archaeologists. For a start, it's the oldest human-made structure in Poland. More intriguingly than that, nobody knows when Krakus Mound was made or why. Archaeological excavations were carried out in the 1930s and confirmed that there's a solid wooden core at the heart of the mound, covered with turf and soil. A few 8th century artifacts were found within the mound, but no human remains. It's possible that the artifacts were left behind by 8th century people who dug into the mound out of a similar sense of curiosity, and the mound itself is far older. A further 4 smaller mounds once surrounded this one, but all of them were demolished to create a new city wall for Krakow during the 19th century. As it's been almost a century since the last archaeological investigation of Crocus Mound, perhaps it's time to take another look. The Tomb of the Leopards is not literally a tomb built for leopards. Instead, this ancient Etruscan burial chamber is named for the leopards painted above the banqueting scene on its walls. It's part of the larger necropolis of Monterozzi in Lazio, Italy, and is thought to have been built somewhere between 470 and 450 BCE. The murals of the tomb are among the best preserved anywhere in the country, and show clear influences drawn from the Greek Attic art of the era. In particular, all of the women in the murals are depicted as light-skinned, and all the men are depicted as dark-skinned. Rather than being a reflection of reality, this was an artistic convention in both ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, and clearly spread to Italy too. The tomb was discovered in 1875, and was visited by the English writer and novelist D.H. Lawrence in the 1920s, who wrote of it fondly and noted that the liveliness of the paintings made it almost seem as if the Etruscans of some 2,500 years hence were still alive with him in the room. The mosaic of Rehab is historically significant for many reasons. Also known as both the Baraita of the boundaries and the Tel Rehov inscription, it features the longest text inscription of any mosaic in Israel, and is also the oldest known Talmudic text of any kind. It was found on the floor of an ancient synagogue in Tel Rehov in 1973, and is thought to be 1,700 years old. Unlike most mosaics of both the era and the area, it features no symmetrical designs and very little in the way of ornamentation. Instead, it contains a very long list of fruit and vegetables subject to tithing in 18 towns in the surrounding area. It's not necessarily a fascinating thing to read, but it has helped historians to understand how Jewish laws of the time affected farmers, and provided further detail about the historical geography of Palestine during the late Roman era. The text also delineates the boundaries of the land of Israel in what might be the first attempt to establish the country's legal status after the end of the Babylonian captivity. You'd have to be a solicitor with a flair for ancient law to understand parts of it, but it's incredible to see it all laid out as a mosaic, rather than a scroll or a manuscript. The only thing we can say with any certainty about Ohio's Great Serpent Mound is that it's in Peebles, and it's the world's largest earthwork effigy with a total length of 1,330 feet. Anything beyond that is speculation and educated guesswork. The most widely believed of those educated guesses is that the Adena people built the 3-foot-high serpent, but that seems to clash with scientific evidence. The Adena lived on these lands 3,000 years ago, but disappeared just over 2,000 years ago. Samples of charcoal taken from the mound suggest that it's only 1,000 years old. That was the time when the Fort Ancient civilization lived here, but they didn't make anything else like this that we're aware of. Researchers and experts can't even agree on what the serpent is supposed to represent. Some of them believe that it's in the process of swallowing an egg, and may have fertility implications, whereas others say the sphere close to its mouth represents the moon. We think there's a bigger question than that, though. How did these ancient people create a cohesive work of art like this when it would have been impossible to even see what they were doing from ground level? Very little is known about the people who lived in Peru before the time of the Inca. We know that there was a civilization living there who built fantastic monuments and cities, but we don't know who they were or where they went. One of the many things they left behind is Silustani, an ancient cemetery on the shore of Lake Umayo. Each of the individual tombs here is built above the ground, inside a self-contained tower known as a cholpas. It's been suggested, but not confirmed, that they may have been built by the Kula people, who are known to have lived here until they were conquered during the 15th century. Understanding the tombs and the people inside them is a job that's been made harder by grave robbers, who have broken some of them open with dynamite and taken whatever was once inside. From what's left, we can say that the tomb appears to have been made for family groups, and probably only those who could be considered noble. Some of the chulpas have been redressed years after they were first built with Inca stone blocks, which suggests the Inca carried on using them long after their builders were gone. Back in the 1940s, there was a very pleasant resort and hotel on the banks of Lake Minnewanka in Alberta, Canada, called Minnewanka Landing. You can still visit the resort today, but you'll need diving equipment to see it. It's 60 feet below the waterline, and it didn't get down there by accident. The resort first opened in 1888 and offered cottages, restaurants, hotels, and cruise boat rental. But it fell victim to destruction from its own side during the Second World War. It had been decided that the nearby Calgary Power Company needed to increase its hydroelectric capacity to supply an explosives plant, and the only way to do it was to expand the lake. Minnewanka Landing was deliberately drowned in June 1941 as the water levels rose by 100 feet. The waters of the lake are exceptionally cold, and so the freezing temperatures have preserved the remnants of the resort surprisingly well. It's become a popular site with divers, although the frigid temperatures mean that it isn't an ideal place to go if you're new to the hobby. In a remarkable archaeological discovery that occurred in June 2023, non-figurative engravings dating back 57,000 years have been found in the La Roche-Cotard cave in France, believed to be the handiwork of Neanderthals. This cave, located in the commune of Langeais, was first discovered in 1912 and is known for the Mask of La Roche-Cotard, also a possible Neanderthal creation. The cave structure includes a narrow gallery, a 33-feet-long tunnel, and 3 wider chambers. The recent discovery of engravings, interpreted as finger flutings, marks a significant addition to our understanding of Neanderthal culture, which remains largely mysterious, particularly in terms of symbolic or artistic expression. The researchers used photogrammetry to create 3D models of these markings and compared them with known human markings. The engravings' deliberate and organized nature suggests they were intentionally created. Sediment dating indicates the cave was sealed off around 57,000 years ago, before Homo sapiens arrived in the region. The presence of only Mousterian tools associated with Neanderthals is further strong evidence that supports the theory that Neanderthals made these engravings. The engravings' purpose remains unclear, but they contribute to the growing evidence of Neanderthal complexity. Next up, we have the 16 Wells of Kamakura, Japan. This is a mysterious grotto dating back to the medieval era and contains a grid of so-called sacred wells. Kamakura was the capital of Japan between the 12th and 14th centuries, and was also the country's religious center. Local people refer to the grotto as the Flower Temple because of the flowers that bloom in and around it all year round. The cluster of wells can be found close to the back of the temple, and is known as Jiroko no I. The wells are dedicated to Kannon Bosatsu, the Buddhist goddess of mercy, and also to a deified monk called Kobodaishi. It's thought that the wells were dug in the 14th century, although it's entirely possible that they're older. Nobody knows what purpose they served, or even if they ever had a purpose at all. It might be a reference to the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, but that's merely speculation without evidence. It's just as possible that this was once a burial cave. Ultimately, the 16 wells are an enigma, and might always remain so. The Tholos tomb in Tiryns can be found in Nea Tirynthaea in Greece. It's a strangely shaped tomb featuring an unusual beehive design, and historians believe it was created to house the remains of a mysterious Greek cult hero. The tomb was in excellent condition when it was discovered on the side of Prophetis Ilias Hill in 1913, but there was no sarcophagus inside it. The only things the archaeologists who broke into the tomb discovered were a potsherd, a large round stone that might have been used as an altar, and a rectangle-shaped stone with a square-shaped indentation carved into its surface. The purpose of that stone is unknown. Without a casket, there's no way of knowing who the tomb was built for. It's only called the Tomb of Tiryns because it's on the same hillside as the Citadel of Tiryns. An analysis of the potsherd suggests that the tomb was built and prepared for a cult hero, but we have no way of knowing who the cult hero was or what they'd done to deserve such a lavish tomb being built for them. All we know is that it was created somewhere between 3,300 and 3,400 years ago. The seemingly unfinished altar and carved stone, coupled with the absence of a sarcophagus, suggests that the tomb may not even have been used after it was built. In Ukraine, the history of Scythians and other ancient cultures can be found just beneath the ground almost everywhere. There are 4,000 to 5,500-year-old burial mounds, nearly 100,000 in number, scattered across the countryside. These mounds, protected only by a thin layer of topsoil, have attracted both grave robbers and archaeologists. In the village of Novooleskandrivka, located 6 miles south of the town of Dnieper, a unique burial mound has been under excavation since 2021. This mound, measuring 393 by 262 feet and 23 feet in height, has revealed 24 burials from the Bronze Age, Iron Age, and Middle Ages. The mound, dated to 5,500 years ago, also houses what's been nicknamed a Dnieper Stonehenge, a series of stone blocks forming a 60 feet diameter circle called a cromlech. This structure, possibly older than the famous Stonehenge in England, was likely used to support the ground and prevent the mound from sprawling outwards. Ukraine is grappling with preserving its rich history while facing a constant threat from Russia. The mounds have been repeatedly robbed and reused, making historical reconstruction challenging. However, new scientific techniques, including DNA analysis, are still providing valuable insights into ancient Ukrainian history. 25,000 years ago, near the village of Dolny Vestonice in the Czech province of Moravia, 3 teenagers were laid to rest in a common grave. The site, discovered in 1922 and excavated in the 20th century, has provided a wealth of information about the Upper Paleolithic era. The most intriguing find is the triple burial, where the bodies were arranged in a unique manner. The skeletons belong to 2 males and a female, all teenagers. The female, identified as having several skeletal anomalies, was placed between the 2 males. The male on her left had his hand placed over her pelvic area, which was covered in red ochre. Both males had necklaces of pierced canine teeth and ivory on their heads, and the male on the left wore a painted mask. Several interpretations of the burial have been proposed, including the possibility of the female dying during childbirth, or the skeletons belonging to a young queen and her 2 consorts. However, the true meaning behind this mysterious prehistoric triple burial remains a subject of speculation. If you have a guess of your own, feel free to leave it in the comments. The Duvensee paddle is a significant archaeological find from the Mesolithic era, discovered in 1926 near Duvensee, a village in Schleswig-Holstein, Germany. It's considered one of the earliest pieces of evidence for the use of water transport during this period. The paddle, carved from a pine tree stem, measures about 21 inches in length, 4 inches in width, and 1.5 inches in thickness. The Duvensee paddle was found in a former bog area within what was once a Mesolithic settlement site. The paddle was broken into several pieces, but was extremely well preserved due to the low oxygen level in the lake's humid sediments that quickly covered it, inhibiting the growth of microorganisms. Radiocarbon dating of hazelnut shells and surviving wood from the location of the discovery gave the artifact an estimated year of origin of 7,390 BCE. Further, accelerator mass spectrometry carried out in 2008 calibrated dates to between 6,527 BCE and 6,311 BCE. The paddle is now on display at the Archaeological Museum Hamburg in Harburg and is admired by thousands of visitors every year. A copy of the paddle was used in a display at the 1936 Summer Olympics. The winged gorgonian is a shield decorated from the first half of the 6th century BCE, found during excavations at Olympia, Greece. It served as an epitropeion, a symbol intended to ward off evil on a shield. The decoration is currently housed at the Archaeological Museum of Olympia under inventory number B110. The central hub of the Gorgonian, with a diameter of about 14 inches, features the head of the Gorgon Medusa and her snake-like hair. The total diameter of the decoration is approximately 32 inches. The Gorgon's eyes were likely once inset with bone, and her open mouth, barred teeth, tusks, and hanging tongue were designed to enhance the symbol's deterrent effect. The hub is encircled by 3 sickle-shaped wings, one of which has been restored with a modern replica. Shield decorations like the winged Gorgonian featuring various images have been known from the 8th century BCE. However, as Greek religion evolved from the 6th century BCE, belief in the power of apotropia dwindled, and shield decorations ceased to be attested from the latter half of the 5th century BCE. The Fat Lady of Saliagos is a seated female figure from the Neolithic period, dating between 5300 and 4500 BCE. This marble figure, notable for its excessively large buttocks, was discovered in 1964 during excavations by the British School at Athens on the uninhabited Cycladic island of Saliagos. The figure is now displayed at the Archaeological Museum of Paros, under inventory number 887. The figure is not completely preserved, missing the head and right shoulder. The remaining height is approximately 2.5 inches. Despite the missing parts, a reconstruction of the idol has been made possible due to similarities in posture and other details with the late Neolithic figurine from Sangri on Naxos. The figure's arms are folded at the elbows with the forearms positioned above the waist, suggesting the fingertips could meet at the center of the body. The upper part of the figure appears almost slender compared to the enormous buttocks, which protrude significantly on the backside. The plump legs are crossed over each other. The discovery of this Neolithic figurine provides valuable insights into the early societies of Southeast Europe and Asia Minor, especially their fertility rituals. The Beauty of Durrës, also known as the Beautiful Maiden of Durrës or the Belle of Durrës, is a 4th century BCE polychromatic mosaic, considered the oldest and most significant mosaic ever discovered in Albania. This 97 square feet mosaic, elliptical in shape, portrays a woman's head surrounded by flowers and other floral elements on a black background. It was discovered in 1918 in Durrës and has been exhibited at the National Historical Museum of Albania in Tirana since 1982. The mosaic was created in the second half of the 4th century BCE in Durrës, then known as Epidamnos, to serve as the decorative floor of a private and luxurious restroom. The mosaic was rediscovered in 1947 by an archaeologist from Durrës, Vangel Toci, and became widely known to the world of art history only after 1959. The mosaic, made of unworked colored pebbles, is still in fairly good condition. The woman's head is large in scale, with a broad face and wide cheeks. Her image appears quiet and peaceful, and her look is dreamy, almost melancholic. The mosaic has become an iconic figure in several forms of visual art, poetry, popular culture, and commercial life, especially in Durrës, the city of its origin. Gabarnmung, or Nawarla Gabarmung, is an archaeological and rock art site in southwestern Arnhem Land, in the top end of Australia's Northern Territory. The site, which translates to Hole in the Rock in Jawun, has been inhabited for at least 44,000 years, making it one of the oldest radiocarbon-dated sites in Australia. The oldest rock art at the site is over 28,000 years old, the oldest securely dated prehistoric art in Australia. The rock shelter was constructed by tunneling into a naturally eroded cliff face, creating a 62 by 62 feet sub-horizontal ceiling, ranging in height from 5.7 to 8 feet above floor level. The shelter features prehistoric paintings of fish, wallabies, crocodiles, people, and spiritual figures, mostly located on the shelter ceiling. The site was rediscovered in 2006 and first excavated in 2010. A fragment of a ground-edge stone axe found at the site has been dated at 35,500 years old, making it the oldest of its type known in the world. The site also includes panels of recent paintings, radiocarbon dated to between 1433 to 1631 and 1658 to 1952, consistent with reports that the cave was still visited within living memory. Noath, part of the Boyne Valley complex in Ireland, is renowned for its extensive collection of megalithic art dating back to around 3300 BCE. One of the most intriguing pieces is Curbstone 52, known as the Calendar Stone. This stone is believed to demonstrate the Neolithic people's advanced astronomical knowledge, particularly their understanding of the lunar cycle. The Calendar Stone features a series of symbols, including waves and moon representations, which can be interpreted to track the synodic month and calculate large subunits of the 19-year metonic cycle of the moon. For instance, the stone has 31 waves, which, when doubled, represent 62 synodic periods of the moon. This is 5 days longer than 5 tropical solar years, a discrepancy the Neolithic mound builders were aware of. That would mean that the mound builders had knowledge of the metonic cycle long before the Greek Meton, who lived in the 5th century BCE, claimed to have discovered it. It was for him that the cycle was named, but perhaps it's been falsely attributed. This stone, along with other megalithic art at Noath, provides a fascinating glimpse into the astronomical observations and knowledge of our ancient ancestors. A 1,800-year-old sarcophagus, believed to have belonged to a young Roman man, was recently returned to the Israeli Antiquities Authority after initially being hidden by builders. The limestone sarcophagus, measuring 8 feet long and weighing 2 tons, is slightly damaged due to its rough handling, but is still considered one of the most important and beautiful ever discovered in Israel. The sarcophagus is decorated on all sides with images, including cupids, bull heads, wreaths, an amphora with grapes, a young man who's likely a representation of the deceased, and a Medusa head. Medusa was considered a protector of the dead in ancient Roman times. The city of Ashkelon, where the sarcophagus was found, was a mix of pagan Romans, Jews, and Samaritans during the 3rd century. The sarcophagus was recovered in an overnight operation after the IAA received a tip-off about illegal activity at a construction site. The builders had hidden the sarcophagus, likely to avoid delays or cancellation of their project. The IAA has reminded people that it will strictly enforce the law against those who purposely damage antiquities, which could result in up to 5 years in prison. Could you solve the mystery of Tel Kadesh? If so, you'll succeed where countless archaeologists have failed. In 2008, archaeologists came across a treasure trove of buried objects while excavating a site in Tel Kadesh, not far from the border between Lebanon and Israel. The treasures are a collection of personal objects that were buried deliberately beneath a paving stone some 2,200 years ago. They include a figurine of Eros, a hairpin made from bone, metal writing implements, and most curiously of all, 23 game pieces made from polished glass. It's thought that the pieces might have been used to play a game similar to chess. The items, all of which are well preserved, were buried at the same time in a deliberate act. The nature of the act and the identity of the person who buried the artifacts are the mystery here. It's considered possible that the burial was a symbolic act. The items were probably the childhood possessions of a young girl, and the act of burying them might symbolize her bidding farewell to her youth as she prepares for marriage. If that were common practice, though, surely discoveries like this would be commonplace. We move to the Balkan Peninsula now, where the world's oldest known cosmetics were found inside buried ceramic bottles in July 2014. The first of the small bottles were found during excavation work at the Slovenian site of Zhorna Radvanja, after which a wider dig turned up more bottles. In the 7 years since then, over 100 similar bottles have been found. Archaeologists originally believed the artifacts to be children's toys, but their opinions quickly changed. Analysis of the bottles showed tiny holes in the handles, which would have enabled them to be worn around the waist or neck when attached to a thread. Inside the bottles, scientists detected traces of cerussite, a substance sometimes known as white lead. White lead was still used in modern paint manufacturing as recently as 100 years ago. Along with cerussite, there were also traces of beeswax, animal fats, and vegetable oil. Mixed together, the substances would have formed a cosmetic paste that could be applied to the skin. That suggests that the people who lived here 4,300 years ago were so concerned with keeping their faces painted white that they carried makeup bottles around with them all the time. Sadly, we have no idea why. Rome was very important to the ancient Romans. That's why they called themselves Romans. Even the boundaries of the mighty city were considered to be sacred places, and so they were marked with special stones. The stones were known as palmareal markers, but very few examples still exist today. This one, discovered in June 2021, is the first to be found in over a century. It dates back to the time of Emperor Claudius and turned up during excavation and restoration work at the Augustus Mausoleum. Legend has it that the Palmarium, the ancient border of Rome, was plowed by Romulus himself on the day that Rome was founded in 753 BCE. The city's walls were built on the inside of the furrow, and crossing the Palmarium was such a heinous offense that Romulus immediately executed Remus when he did it. In the year 80 BCE, Sulla expanded the Palmarium in a show of power that was considered sacrilegious by some, but set a precedent that would be followed by later emperors. This newly discovered marker comes from the Claudian expansion of 49 CE, who expanded the boundary as a symbolic representation of his expansion of Roman territory by conquering Britain. In early June 2021, archaeologists carried out excavation work at the site of the Temple of Zeus Lepsinos in Turkey's Muğla province. It turned out to be a worthwhile exercise. The temple is already known as one of the best preserved ancient Roman temples in all of Asia Minor, and it turns out the treasures hiding beneath it are equally well preserved. Those treasures include this fine pair of marble Kouros statues, both of which are 2,500 years old. The statues are accompanied by a Hellenistic-era inscription. One of them is naked, whereas the other is depicted as wearing leather armor. Both of them carry lions in their hands, which might mark them out as representations of the Roman deity Apollo. Unfortunately, it has not yet been possible to decipher the inscription. It's long and might have much to tell us about the history of the region if translation attempts are ultimately successful. Local archaeologists now hope that the discovery will put the city of Euramos on the map in terms of recognition from fellow archaeologists. Here's a happy coincidence. In July 2021, tests were carried out on a 2,300-year-old fragment of linen wrapped around an ancient Egyptian mummy that's held inside the Tis Museum of Classical Antiques under the control of the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. To the surprise of everybody, the tests showed the cloth to be a perfect match for another fragment held by the Getty Institute in the United States of America. The inscriptions and images on the fragments never made much sense in isolation, but side by side, they appear to show scenes from the Book of the Dead and even details of a few magic spells. Prior to around 2,500 years ago, the Egyptians used to paint scenes like these on the walls of the tombs of the deceased, but then burial practices changed for unknown reasons, and scenes were painted on the fabric that was wrapped around the dead instead. It seems the fabric scraps were torn away from the body of a man named Petosiris several decades ago and then became separated for unknown reasons. More pieces may exist in private collections elsewhere in the world. Back when Israel was known as Judea, the land was occupied and controlled by the Romans. Their presence wasn't always welcomed, though, and several notable Jewish uprisings happened during different times of Roman control. Two of those ancient events are commemorated by these coins, which were minted 70 years apart by ancient Jewish rebels. Both were found in the West Bank of Jerusalem in July 2021. The first of the coins, minted in the year 67, is imprinted with the image of a vine leaf and a message written in Hebrew that translates as Free Zion. An inscription on the other side of the coin reads Year 2, perhaps indicating how long the rebellion has gone on for. It comes from a time when Jewish rebels had driven Roman forces out of much of the region and formed a government. This coin was minted by that government. 3 years later, the Romans took Jerusalem back, destroying most of the Temple Mount in the process. The second coin, dated to the year 134, comes from the time of the Bar Kokhba rebellion and also comes with an inscription that says, "Free Jerusalem." The name Shimon on the reverse of the coin is probably a reference to Jewish rebel leader Shimon Bar Kokhba. This rebellion was also successful in retaking Jerusalem, but lost the city again in the year 136. We're heading back to Turkey now, where an ancient and primitive musical instrument was found during excavation work in Başalevler, Anatolia in July 2021. It's thought to be the oldest musical instrument ever found in the country, with an age of around 8,500 years. The discovery came after a local resident tipped off the nearby Bilecik Archaeology Museum about some ceramic pieces that they'd recently found in a field, which prompted a full-scale dig. Professional archaeologists quickly found 11 sets of 9,000-year-old human remains, along with seeds for buckwheat, barley, and lentils, suggesting that these ancient people were accomplished agriculturalists. This bone artifact is believed to be either a whistle or a flute. It has one carefully drilled hole on one side and 2 more on the other. The presence of holes suggests it has more in common with a modern flute than a whistle. Similar but not identical instruments have been found elsewhere in Turkey before and are known as tuteks. The instrument is too delicate to be played, but experts plan to create an exact copy of it so they can recreate its sound. There have been archaeological digs ongoing in Crimea since the beginning of 2021, and some of those digs are beginning to yield results. In June 2021, this ancient and tiny statuette of Harpocrates, the Egyptian god of silence, was found close to the Crimean village of Yakovenkovo. A dark blue pendant was found close to the statuette. This part of Crimea used to be a necropolis known as Kizol, but grave robbers know that just as well as archaeologists do. The site has been targeted by looters several times in the past, but grave robbers tend not to take ceramics. That's why the statuette was still there to be found. It depicts the deity as a baby, holding a finger to his lips to shush anyone who looks at him. Some experts disagree with that, though, stating that a finger placed on the mouth was a symbol of childhood to the ancient Egyptians. Harpocrates went on to be worshipped by the Greeks and then the Romans, who would often throw feasts of fish, vegetables, and lotus flowers in his honor. Tibet is already thought of as a sacred place, but does this June 2021 discovery make it even more special? It's a collection of stone artifacts that archaeologists claim to be tools. The claim is startling because the objects are more than 100,000 years old. They were found in an area known as Gyeongjunfu in the northeastern reaches of the Tibetan Plateau. Butchered animal bones were found at the same site. The technique used to make the tools is similar to that used by the Denisovans, an archaic human species who lived in the Denisovan caves of Siberia at around the same time. Now, some scientists believe that the most ancient residents of Tibet might have come here from Siberia. It might even be the experience that the Denisovans had of living in cold, high-altitude conditions that enabled people to settle here in the first place. Whether these people were Denisovan in origin or not, this was clearly an important focal point for them. They left behind more than 100 stone tools, along with 13 pieces of rock that the tools were worked from. A nice, warm bowl of noodles is the most traditional of all Chinese meals, and that tradition goes back a very long way. In fact, thanks to this July 2021 discovery, we can say that it goes back at least 4,000 years. The find was made in the village of Lajia, close to the upper reaches of the Yellow River, and is thought to be a relic of the country's ancient Qijia culture. The village is a well-known archaeological site within the country, but this discovery is special even by Lajia's findings. The bowl was overturned shortly after it was made 4,000 years ago, and the contents were sealed inside it. That means that the thin, yellow noodles were still there for archaeologists to find when they flipped the bowl back over. The 10 feet of sediment on top of it probably helped in terms of preservation too. These are the oldest noodles ever found anywhere in the world, and might finally solve the debate over who invented the foodstuff. Both the Chinese and the Italians claim noodles as a culinary invention of their own. But unless Italian archaeologists can find something older than this, the debate is over. Plenty of Roman vases have been discovered by archaeologists over the years, but not all Roman vases are equal. This one, which was found in Autun, France, in November 2020, is very special. The site is an ancient necropolis containing 230 graves, and although its existence has been known of for a while, the excavation work is slow and painstaking. Discoveries in the past 12 months include chiseled gold rings, blue glass beads, amber pins, and fine examples of sandstone sarcophagi. But nothing quite like this diatretic vase. It's the only complete specimen of its kind ever found in the former Roman territory of Gaul, and is thought to come from the 4th century. Only 10 such vases have ever been found, and the last one came from North Macedonia during the 1970s. The vase represents the peak of late Roman accomplishment in glassmaking, and is adorned with numerous carved decorations and reliefs. The phrase, "live in felicity," is carved on one area of its surface. You could translate that as "live happily," which would make this the ancient equivalent of the ubiquitous modern phrase, "live, laugh, love." If you have eye problems in the modern world, you call upon the services of an optician. If you had eye problems 2,100 years ago and lived in the Roman Empire, it seems you just rubbed a putty-like beeswax mixture on your lower eyelid and hoped for the best. This ancient eye medicine was found inside the wreckage of a merchant ship that sank close to Tuscany 2,100 years ago. The wreck was found in 1974. It took until 1989 to explore it, and until 2019 for scientists to finally solve the riddle of these loaf-shaped gray tablets, which were discovered inside circular tin boxes. We're now confident that they're a form of eye medicine. Scientists detected beeswax, pine resin, smithsonite, and hydrozincite in the mixture, which is consistent with recipes for eye treatments suggested by Pliny the Elder. The Latin word for eye wash is collyrium, which is derived from a Greek phrase meaning small round loaves. These tablets look like small round loaves, and that seals the deal for us. Would they have solved any of your eye problems, though? Probably not. It's far beyond us to say whether or not ghosts are real. If you want to believe in the supernatural, that's up to you. We do know of an abandoned location where ghosts are supposed to come out and play after dark, though, and it's India's Bangar Fort. There are so many stories and superstitions about ghostly activity at this fort that entry is now prohibited after the sun goes down. The fort was built during the 17th century and used to host a whole town's worth of people, but the occupants became so afraid of the alleged ghosts that they abandoned it and built a new town a short distance away from it. The stories about the haunting are colorful. One of them speaks of a wizard who cursed the fort with his final breath after he was fatally wounded by a woman he'd attempted to heal. The gates, temples, and palaces of the old fort stand silently, and tourists still visit during daylight hours, but you're unlikely to catch anyone from the surrounding area in there. The locals think the visitors who visit the site are foolish. Don't let that put you off if you think you're brave enough to stick it out. Le Musée des Moulages in Paris, France, might be the creepiest museum in the world. It's an utterly horrifying collection of dermatological models, many of which resemble hacked-off body parts or complete corpses. The museum has been open since 1867, but back then all it contained were paintings, drawings, and photographs of skin diseases. Things changed when the museum hired a wax fruit modeler who history records only by the single name of Beretta. Over the next 40 years, Beretta made more than 3,500 wax models of diseased skin and diseased people. Those who love the museum say it's the greatest and most unique intersection of art and science in the world. Those who hate it say it's more like something from a freak show. It's not for us to say which of those categories it belongs to. but we'll say that there are plenty of diseases that you won't even have heard of until you see their effects in the museum, and when you do, you'll wish you never had. The human body is a strange thing, and some of its cruelest tricks are recorded here in wax. Sticking with the topic of 19th century weirdness, let's talk about Victorian mourning dolls. The dolls were part of British folk rituals to mark the death of loved ones and persisted until the early 20th century. The deaths of the time typically took place in the home, after which the remains of the deceased were prepared for burial, often spending time on display in the home. Mortality rates for infants and children were high in Victorian Britain, so children were exposed to death at an early age. It wasn't the great taboo that it is today. By the mid-19th century, the commissioning of a special mourning doll to lay at the grave of a deceased child had become an expected part of the grieving and funeral process. Where possible, the hair of the real child would be used in the manufacture of the wax dolls. Over time, the dolls became larger and more elaborate. By the late 19th century, the mourning dolls of rich families were often life-sized, realistic effigies of the child they'd lost, dressed in their child's clothes. Prior to the funeral, they'd be kept in a crib. Their clothes would be changed every day, and they'd be treated as a substitute for the real baby. It sounds creepy now, but at the time, it must have been comforting. We're not done with representations of death yet. What you're looking at in these images is a Chamunda sculpture from Jaipur, Odisha, India. The terrifying sculpture looks like something from a horror movie. It has a semi-skeletal body, sunken eyes, a gaping mouth, long nails to scratch you with, and a sunken, emaciated stomach. The veins in its skin seem to be bursting through in an effort to escape. Despite all of this visceral horror, a Chamunda is a sculpture of a goddess. That's right, this monster is a goddess, not a demon. She wears a garland of skulls and ties her matted hair with a snake. In one hand, she holds a bowl full of blood, and in the other, she brandishes a decapitated head. The name Chamunda comes from the belief that she slayed the demons Munda and Chanda, after which she became the goddess of both death and time. Forgive us for being so rude, but to our eyes, it looks like both death and time haven't been kind to her, and that the effort of slaying the demons took a lot out of her. When images of our next discovery first circulated on the internet in 2017, historians quickly wrote it off as a hoax. More recently, though, they've been coming around the idea that it might be real. If we take it at face value, this is a cabinet of poisonous substances hidden away inside a book that was bound in the year 1600. Each of the tiny drawers in the cabinet is labeled, indicating that it once contained deadly nightshade, valerian, thornapple, castor oil plant, and several other poisons that had the potential to kill you if you consumed them. The one remaining green bottle inside the cabinet is labeled with a message written in Latin that translates as, "It is inevitable that all men must one day die." That seems a little on the nose for this to have been an assassin's cabinet, but perhaps the assassin who owned it was something of an eccentric. Those who believe it to be a genuine artifact are keen to point out that it could just as easily be an apothecary. Poison and medicine weren't that far apart at the start of the 17th century, so small doses of poison might have been used as medication. In December 2015, archaeologists dug into the ground beneath the ancient convent of Jacobins in Rennes, France, and found this set of 5 embalmed human hearts buried inside lead urns. Prior to their discovery, they'd been buried for approximately 400 years. Using scanning technology that didn't involve opening the urns, researchers have been able to prove that the hearts inside them still contain their chambers, arteries, and valves. Some of them even still bear signs of the cardiac diseases that probably killed their owners. While the practice of removing a heart and entombing it separately from the rest of the body might sound odd today, it was considered romantic a few centuries ago. The heart would eventually be buried with the widow or widower of the deceased when the time came for them to die. One of the hearts, that of Toussaint Perrin, a knight of Brephelia, was found inside the lead coffin of his wife Louis de Quengo, Lady of Brephelia. She passed away in 1656 and literally took her husband's heart with her to the grave. When you put it like that, it sounds sweet. The Nazca lines in Peru are arguably the most famous petroglyphs in the world, but we know very little about who created them. One of the few things that we do know, though, is that those very same people also had a ghoulish habit of collecting human heads and keeping them as trophies. It was long suspected that the trophy heads were taken from enemies in battle, but a 2009 study destroyed that assumption. By studying trophy head specimens at the Field Museum in Chicago, USA, scientists were able to prove that the heads belonged to people who lived in the same place and belonged to the same culture as the people who collected them. Rather than battle trophies, the heads may have been kept as part of a practice related to ancestor worship between 1500 and 2000 years ago. Whatever the reason might have been, it seems that the heads were worn as accessories, perhaps during rituals or ceremonies. The skulls of the heads have been pierced to allow a woven cord to be passed through them for this purpose. The treatment process used by these ancient people did such a good job of preserving the heads that many of them still have all of their hair after all this time. It was said by Arthur C. Clarke that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Naturalist and Egyptologist Girolamo Segato's work with mummification and petrification was so advanced that we still have no idea how he achieved his remarkable results today. And the reason we don't know is that he terrified the 19th century society he lived in. Many of his peers feared that he was a witch and destroyed all written records of his work after his death. Segato, a professor, was fascinated by the chemistry of the human anatomy for his whole life and had a particular interest in ancient Egyptian mummies. He traveled to see some when he was 26 years old and developed a new, better method for preserving the human body after he returned. Rather gruesomely, he also made the so-called Segato table out of petrified muscles, bones, and pieces of intestine. It's no wonder that people found the man and his methods a little creepy, but it's surprising that we still can't discover the secrets of those methods 200 years later. What doomed the ancient town of Atlit Yam and condemned it to collapse into the water off the coast of Haifa, Israel? Scientists have been able to tell us that the town has been beneath the waves for around 8,300 years, but they haven't yet been able to say how it got there. However, being underwater has helped to preserve the town and its structures. Because of that, marine archaeologists can still see Atlit Yam's water wells, individual houses, and burial grounds partitioned off from the rest of the town. That's a greater degree of town planning than we expect to find with people who lived 8,300 years ago. We generally think of them as little more than nomadic hunter-gatherers. Based on the evidence of Atlit Yam, we should reassess that perspective. In the middle of the town was a freshwater spring which was surrounded by a stone circle. Examining the bones of the people in the graveyard has led to an even more surprising discovery. At least 2 of them died from tuberculosis. These are easily the oldest known cases of tuberculosis in the world, and might offer an alternative explanation as to why the town was abandoned to its fate. Although we usually associate Vikings with war and conquest, they were also skilled builders and innovators. One example of their genius in the field of innovation is the existence of the Visby lenses. Although we found plenty of examples of these lenses in Viking graves on Sweden's Gotland Island, nobody can say with any certainty what they were used for. Guesses range from an early attempt at creating a telescope to an efficient way of starting fires. The lenses come from between the 11th and 12th centuries and usually come with a silver mount, although some sets suggest that the mounts aren't quite as old as the lenses. Studies of the lenses have shown that they have low spherical aberration, which is a strong indicator that they were deliberately designed to magnify anything seen through them. examples of the localized setting in which they are found, and the relatively low numbers of examples, it's possible that only one worker was skilled enough to create them, and that no more Visby lenses were made after that person passed away. Nothing this advanced in terms of lens making would appear anywhere else in the world for several centuries. The ancient Sumerians might have been the first advanced civilization in the world, but we understand very little about them. They left many artifacts behind, but those artifacts are often difficult to decipher. This one illustrates our point perfectly. It's 5,500 years old and appears to be covered in mathematical equations. In March 2019, experts came up with a new theory about it. They believe that this seemingly impenetrable clay disk is actually a Sumerian star map and records an asteroid crashing into Earth on June 29, 3123 BCE. The disc-shaped tablet was found in the ancient library of King Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, Iraq, during the 19th century, and eventually found its way to the British Museum. A recent translation of the cuneiform inscription on its surface includes the line, "A white stone bowl approaching from the sky." The other written elements of the inscription include references to the weather, cloud cover, and the positions of other visible objects in the sky at the time of the incident. Scientists have been able to prove that a large asteroid hit Kofels in Austria on this date, so it must have been truly enormous for this Sumerian astronomer to have been able to see it clearly from such a distance. Speaking of impressive ancient jewelry, here's a gold earring that was found in Jerusalem in November 2008. It's of a style that would still be considered fashionable today, but this isn't a piece of contemporary jewelry. In fact, it's about 2,000 years old. Archaeologists in Jerusalem found it close to the old city's walls, buried beneath a parking lot. Under the parking lot, the experts found the remains of a Byzantine-era structure, but this piece was made long before the Byzantine era began. Based on that, it's possible that the earring was considered to be a valuable family heirloom, passed down from generation to generation. Valuable finds like this one from Jerusalem's Roman era are rare because the Roman Empire almost totally destroyed the old city during the 1st century, and most items of value were pillaged. Even artifacts that survived the Roman assault were often melted down and recycled over the centuries that followed. So to find an ancient and valuable object like this in such good condition is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence for an archaeologist. It's now on display inside a museum. We're staying in this part of the world for a little longer because we have another earring to show you. This one's a lot younger than the gold earring we just looked at, but it's still ancient. It's a 900-year-old earring, and it was found in the ruins of what's thought to be a Crusader tower in the town of Modi'in Maccabim Reut. The tower stands on Titora Hill and is about 20 miles from Jerusalem. Rather than being discovered by a professional archaeologist, this earring was found in June 2017 by a team of 2,500 school children serving as summer volunteers with the Israeli Antiquities Authority. The part of the fortress that the earring was found in is thought to have been the kitchen, so it's easy to imagine a busy cook accidentally dropping their jewelry either into the food or behind a stove, only for it to remain trapped there for 9 centuries. Titora Hill is known to have been settled by humans since at least 6,000 years ago, so there's no shortage of ancient artifacts to be found there by archaeologists, school children, or anybody else. Fashion is something that's changed a lot over the centuries. There was a time when no self-respecting male member of the aristocracy would dream of being seen in public without his hat pin. A fine hat pin was a sign of wealth and power, so we imagine that King Edward IV of England was extremely irritated when he lost this one in a field in Lincolnshire at some point in the mid-15th century. The artifact remained lost until it was discovered by amateur archaeologist Lisa Grace and her metal detector in April 2019. What gives it away as being the king's hat pin is the fact that it's designed as a sun in splendor, which was Edward's personal emblem, and features a purple amethyst at its center. Purple amethyst is known to have been a favorite of the monarch. You can even see the piece in a few portraits of the king painted during his lifetime. It's thought that the hatpin may have been lost in battle and was only found in 2019 because it was disturbed when the farmer who owns the land plowed his field. It's now in the hands of the British Museum, which is considering the question of whether it's possible to declare with 100% certainty that it belonged to the king. Since we're in England, this would be a good time to talk about the Corbridge Hoard. This treasure collection is made from iron rather than gold, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. The Corbridge Hoard was discovered in 1964 within the ruins of the Roman town of Coria, which is now part of Corbridge in Northumberland. This part of the United Kingdom has proved to be a rich hunting ground for archaeologists over the years, as an enormous collection of gold coins was found in the same area in 1911. The collection of iron goods was found in the remains of a 2nd century administrative building. They'd been placed in an iron-bound, leather-coated chest and buried deliberately for unknown reasons. The hoard's discovery was especially important because it contributed greatly to our understanding of segmented armor. The chest contained 6 full suits of lorica segmentata armor of the kind that the soldiers of the Roman Empire wore. Historians had always known the armor existed before this discovery, but they'd never understood how it fit together. The Corbridge Hoard answered all of their questions. We're back to golden treasure now. To be more specific, we're checking out the treasure of Gourdon. This stunning golden treasure was found in 1845, close to the commune of Gourdon in eastern France, hence its name. Much like the Corbridge Hoard, archaeologists are certain that the treasure of Gourdon was buried deliberately somewhere close to the year 524. The most outstanding individual artifact in the collection is a beautiful golden chalice decorated with turquoise and garnet. The archaeologists of the era also found more than 100 gold coins dating to the reigns of Byzantine emperors Leo I through Justin I, which takes us from 457 to 518. Local records indicate that there was a monastery in Gourdon during the 6th century. There's no trace of the monastery today, but historians think that the treasure might have been given to the monastery for safekeeping. Sometime after that, it was likely buried in anticipation of a raid that never happened. For whatever reason, at a point beyond that, the existence of the treasure was forgotten about, and the monastery was demolished. The theory can't be proven, but it makes a degree of sense. Bulgarian archaeologists got very excited about the discovery of a golden cross in November 2018. In truth, they might have got a little too excited. At the time of its discovery, some of the country's experts claimed that it was the oldest golden cross in the world and contained fragments of the cross that Jesus Christ was crucified on. The cross was found inside the ruins of Trapezitsa fortress in Tarnovgrad, which was once the capital city of the Second Bulgarian Empire. Today, there's nothing left of it but ruins standing in the shadow of the modern city of Veliko Tarnovo. The cross was found beneath an altar pillar in what was once the fortress's church. The team responsible for the discovery was instantly struck by the fact that the cross is made of solid gold and its excellent state of preservation. Typical crosses of the era were made of iron or bronze, so the fact that this one is made of gold indicates that it's special. Throw in the fact that it's hollow, contains shards of wood, and has an engraved depiction of the crucifixion on the front, and it isn't hard to see why they got so excited. It will never be possible to prove or disprove that the shards of wood come from the one true cross, so it's all a question of faith. The world's most famous Egyptian tomb is that of Tutankhamun. However, it isn't the world's richest. Of all the tombs of the pharaohs we've discovered so far, the richest is probably that of Susenes I, also known as the Silver Pharaoh. It was found in Tanis, Egypt, by the French archaeologist Pierre Montet in 1940. Susenus ruled Lower Egypt 3,000 years ago and was likely regarded by historians before they saw the magnificence of his burial chamber. There, they found the former king inside a sarcophagus made of solid silver. Silver was hard to find in the Egypt of the time, which made it more valuable than gold. The presence of so much silver in this tomb means it must have been imported from abroad. That's not to say there was no gold in the vault, though. Montet also found a beautiful solid gold death mask and a gold and lapis lazuli collar. The lavish nature of the grave goods might be linked to the length of Sunenes's reign, which was somewhere between 40 and 50 years. To spend so long in charge is especially unusual in what's thought to have been a period of great instability in Egypt, so perhaps he was a significant pharaoh after all. Back to treasure hoards again now, and the next one up is the Dowris hoard. It was found in Dowris, County Offaly, Ireland during the 1820s. We can't be any more precise than during the 1820s because the discovery was made by farm laborers and wasn't immediately reported to authorities, and detailed records weren't kept. There are just over 200 artifacts in the hoard, all of which can be dated to the Bronze Age. Rather than being deposited as a single hoard, experts think that the artifacts were thrown into a lake one at a time as ritual deposits, probably made for religious reasons. The discovery of the hoard is so important in terms of our understanding of prehistory in Ireland that the late Bronze Age period in the country is now known as the Dowris phase. The changing complexity and sophistication of the artifacts in the hoard show the progression of Irish bronzesmiths and metalworkers as they became more adept at working with sheet metal and casting over hundreds of years. It was once thought that ironworking skills of this magnitude reached Britain from the Hallstatt culture, but didn't make it to Ireland until around 2,600 years ago. But the artifacts in the Dowris hoard prove that to be untrue. Many of us are familiar with the concept of having a best set of silverware or crockery, the kind of plates and dining utensils that you only get out of storage when you're hosting an exceptionally important meal. The tradition of having a special meal set clearly goes back well over 1,500 years because a fine dining set known as the Vinkovci treasure turned up in Croatia in 2012. There are just under 50 items in the collection, including ornately designed plates and cups with elaborate etchings on their surface. Testing of the items have shown that they're made of locally sourced silver, which implies they were made in and around the Vinkovci area at some point during the 4th century. That means that they date back to Roman rule in the country, a fact backed up by the fact that some of the plates bear an inscription proclaiming that they were made by Antoninus Aquila. The treasure was found during government-sponsored construction work in the center of the town and was immediately put on public display at the Museum of Arts and Crafts in Zagreb, where it still is today. Love was in the air in the area of Tangley in the United Kingdom in November 2015 when this stunning ring was found in a field by a metal detectorist. The gold ring has a stone set into it, and in the middle of that stone is a depiction of Cupid, the Roman god of love. You might also know the deity as Eros, as that's how he's known in Greek legend. The artifact is believed to be around 1,700 years old, which is in keeping with the Roman Empire's rule over England. Archaeologists can't decide whether the ring belonged to a man or a woman, but have been able to confirm that the stone is Nicolo, which is a form of blue onyx. Depictions of Cupid were popular in the jewelry of the era. Historians have speculated that items bearing his image might have been worn by single people as a way of advertising the fact that they were looking for a partner, but this theory hasn't yet been proven. It's a stunning piece of jewelry no matter what its backstory is, and it's now in the collection of the Andover Museum. When Derek McLennan discovered a 10th century hoard of Viking treasure in a field in western Scotland in 2014, he thought it was the luckiest day of his life, especially when the collection went on to be sold for $2.5 million. He felt less fortunate in September 2019, when the Church of Scotland announced it was suing him for a share of that money on account of the fact that the treasure was found on their land, and he hadn't asked for permission to go digging in it. It's a good job he did go digging, though, because if he hadn't, the collection now known as the Galloway Hoard might never have been found. It's considered to be the richest and most significant Viking discovery in British history, made up of bracelets, rings, brooches, and an early example of a Viking Christian cross made of enamel. Many of the items in the hoard come from different European countries, which might imply that this was a Viking warrior's personal treasure collection, gathered from ransacking and pillaging. The hoard appears to have been buried for safekeeping, but the owner never returned for it. The church claims that Derek went back on an agreement to donate a share of the profits to them, and the matter ended up in court.